do or something. Yeah. That was a... What was that word? Hello lovelies, and welcome to the February 2025 episode of the Not Quite Enough Yarn podcast. My name's Lesley and this is a podcast about yarny things, knitting, crochet, spinning, anything else I sort of turn my hand to in a yarn kind of vibe. Hope everyone's well. Thank you for being here, whether it's your first time here or you're an OG. Lovely to have you here and welcome. Thank you. It's called Not Quite Enough Yarn, despite the fact that I have lots, because I rarely buy enough to make a whole garment from the same colour. So there are often stripes and fades, and this is an example. These were actually scraps and leftovers. It's a Skeindeer pattern. Any time I'm wearing a hand knit item, I'll put the details in the notes below. And I held 4-ply / fingering weight yarn that I'd made into a magic ball. I Russian join to make magic balls. I plied it with some grey boucle. You'll see more of that yarn very shortly because I've been using it again, and made the sweater. And I love this sweater. It's probably the one I wear the most, so I've recently made a replacement as well. I record throughout the month as I've got something to show. I record about it, otherwise I'll forget. I'm that age. And I put them all together, put all the pieces together, and then upload on the last weekend of the month. Thank you to the winners of the December Mal who got their I sometimes have trouble speaking as well. They very kindly got in contact to let me know that they'd seen that they were winners. So thank you to those, and congratulations again. I think those are all the notices. We haven't got any make-alongs at the moment, but that lots of people have. So go to Anne from Spar Knits. If you're a sock maker, go to Soxinella, Alice and Diane of My Pink Bathtub. They've got sock make-alongs going on. Yeah, I'm sure you see lots of other podcasters and you're seeing what make-alongs they've got going on. So always plenty to join in with should you so desire. I have a finished object to show you. It's one that I had started and you saw it as a work in progress last month. Quite a quick project, and I've left all my notes for it over there. I'm such a genius. Back in situ. It's a basket that I've made to keep blankets in. The coffee table that we have in our sitting room has a sort of non-standard recess at each end. And I've got a basket at the other end, which is kind of the right size and just holds general bits of life, you know how they do. But I wanted one for baskets because I pile them up, but they tend to fall out, and yeah. So I made this chap here, which is crocheted, and it's mostly grey because that goes with the decor of our room, but I made the base in some different colours just because I felt I wouldn't have quite enough grey, and I was nearly right, but that's all good. So I wanted to make it, to fit the size of the recess, I wanted to make it 22 inches wide, 10 inches deep, so that's 56 centimetres by 25 centimetres, and it was fitting into a height of 12 inches or 30 centimetres. I was basing it mostly on the rhyming bucket pattern, which I'll link below, which is a very thick stash busting crochet pattern where you hold several strands together and make a really thick fabric. I didn't go quite that thick, as you can see I'm a little floppy matron, and so what I did to give it a bit more strength is I actually made it double height, and then I'm folding it over to give a bit more strength on the sides. My other thought process behind that is if it still isn't sturdy enough, I can tuck some card in here to give it some strength on the sides and keep it more upright. I don't need it to be solid, I just need it to hold the blankets together, and I think with the blankets in they will act as a kind of brace to hold it together. So it was quite a yarn buster. I used 3 strands of double knitting weight together, or the equivalent. So some of these yarns are chunky weight, and so I just put 1 lot of double knitting with them. When I got onto the greys, I was using the yarn that's in this sweater. Now this is actually a 3-ply, very fine sort of light fingering, almost lace weight yarn. So I was using that 2 strands together along with the double knitting weight. I also used quite a bit of this Worth Mill yarns, which I was very kindly given. I had about 500 grams of that, and that's all I've got left, so that's all good. I did this in a double crochet stitch, that's single crochet in US terms, for most of it. I may have had a denser fabric if I'd used a half treble or a half double in US terms, but that requires more yarn, and I was conscious that I probably wasn't going to have quite enough. When I'd got to the folded over bit, I didn't really need this to be quite so sturdy, so I've got a couple of rows of regular trebles, a couple of rows of half trebles, and then I finished it off with my usual, which is crab stitch, and that's just double crochet, single crochet US terms, but going in the other direction. So I'm right-handed, so I normally go clockwise, and this is going anti-clockwise, so you get that nice picot sort of edge. Obviously if you were left-handed and normally go anti-clockwise, then you'd go clockwise to get the same effect. Very quick project thanks to its size. It was on a 6mm hook. I used a total of, I weighed this, had to use a different set of scales to my normal, because my normal has a small plate and it's fine for just holding a ball of yarn. But I had to get the kitchen scales with a bowl to fit this in because of the size of it. It came to 1.07 grams of yarn, kilograms, yeah, that wouldn't be right. 1.07 kilograms of yarn. In terms of meterage, there's a slight approximation, and I haven't added it up, so I'll put it on screen. Not very awake this morning, am I? Yes, I'll put on screen what my approximation is, but I'm generally happy with it, so I'm now going to put it in situ, put some blankets in it, hope it all fits, and take a picture. Thanks everyone, see you in the next clip. Hello, you fabulous examples of gorgeousness. I have an FO. Actually, I have 2 to show you. This is the Ranunculus sweater that you saw as a work in progress last month, if you saw last month's episode. And it is done. It is a rainbow. Love a rainbow. Mostly thanks to the yarn. I just added some more blue at the bottom. And the main yarn that I used here is Yarn Art Flowers Merino. This is 75% acrylic, 25% wool, and it's a substantial cake. It's 225 grams, which gives you 590 meters of DK weight yarn, which worked beautifully, as you see. I knew it wouldn't be enough for an entire sweater, so I got a slightly darker blue, and I ordered some yarn from Hobby, and it is their Kind Feather. It's 100% premium acrylic, and it is a nice acrylic. It's very soft. I'm sure many of us remember knitting with squeaky acrylic, but this is a nice soft one. And this is there a colourway on this? It's colour number 15. I didn't tell you the colourway on the yarn art. That was colour number 535. And this gives, oh, come on Lesley, read, 235 meters per 100 grams, again a DK weight. I got 2 of these balls, and this is what I've got left. I'll show you some pictures of the whole sweater so you can see the extent of the colour. Considering I was ordering this online, I was pretty pleased. It wasn't an exact colour match, which I didn't particularly want because you've got stripes, so stripes are fine. But I was pleased with the way it worked with it. I do have some solid colour yarn art, and it's a beautiful colour, but I felt it wouldn't be quite right. I felt the hue of the purple on this wouldn't quite have matched in. I mean, I could have put it at the bottom, it would have been fine, but I prefer this blue. So that is that. So this is the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose. It's the 4th one I've made, I think. Now, the original pattern has a lace pattern here, has some texture and then a lace stitch. I decided not to go for that. I found, and I'm the same with the Love Note on this, that the lace patterns on these larger gauge sweaters can feel quite stretched out, just for my taste. I mean, it's a personal choice thing. So I put in some texture with just knits and pearls, just some grids, and some of them I did in reverse stocking stitch, others are just grids of pearl rows and pearl stitches. So just something to give me a bit of interest while I was making it as much as anything. Total yarn usage, 935.5 metres. And I made the largest size, which I always do. It has come out big on me. I didn't swatch because it is the 4th one I've made and it is oversized. Interestingly, I decided to measure myself because when I was making it, I thought this is coming out very big. And I knew with the health stuff I'd had going on that I'd lost weight. Now, I hadn't weighed myself for decades, but as part of the medical procedures I've been going through, I had to be weighed every 3 weeks because that was a calculation in the medication I was given. Now, that was all done in kilograms. I still think in stones. So I couldn't tell you what my weight is in a number that I would understand, but I knew that it was either going up or going down or whatever was happening. Also, I had some stuff removed in surgery. I will be lighter afterwards, you know, I mean, that's just, if they take some of your colon away, that's a lot of tubing, you know. But what I didn't realise was how much smaller I'd got, because I thought, well, that's just weight coming off, the overall circumference will be the same. But I measured myself and have lost a few inches, about 5 across the girls. Now, whether that's 2.5 each or some around the back, I don't know, but it was actually quite a useful exercise because although I like oversized sweaters and I make oversized sweaters, quite often it can feel like I'm drowning if they're too baggy. It's getting the balance right, particularly on thicker weight ones. On fingering weight, you can kind of drapey, but on a double knitting weight, you might want something that's not quite as overwhelming in terms of volume of fabric. But also, our bodies change all the time. So it's worth measuring ourselves periodically just to make sure we're still making sweaters the same size. They're just numbers. You know, I'm a firm believer in nothing in the value of ourselves is determined by numbers, and whether that's your age, your salary, your weight, how many bedrooms your house has, what car you know, the value of your car, none of these things actually matter. They are just measurements of things in your life that have no value beyond, they might have a material value, but then that doesn't make you a better or worse person. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just, these things don't matter in real terms, but it's useful to measure them so that you can make sure, you know, making the right things, making things the right size. Modifications as well as the stitch pattern. I tapered the sleeves, as I always do. I possibly over tapered the sleeves because they are quite tight around the cuff. However, because these yarns are acrylic and merino, both yarns which tend to grow with laundry and use, then I'm not going to worry about undoing those and making them looser. I'll have a few wears and see how they go. As you can see, I've got my hand in. I'm not living in this sweater permanently. So I'm going to go with it as it is. It's quite comfortable. It's not cutting off circulation to my hands or anything, but it is tighter than I normally would. And again, measure. I've got so many sweaters that I like the fit of, or I like the length of this sleeve, or I like the size of this neckline. Measure them, keep a list, adapt patterns. It's basic stuff, but I haven't been doing it, so time to start. So that's FO number 1, my rainbow ranunculus, which I do like. I just love rainbows. FO number 2 is a bit of a better late than never project because, as you can see, it's Christmassy. Merry Christmas everyone and a Happy New Year. I started this is for my great niece, and I think it was in November I contacted my sister and said, do you think they would like this? Because my niece, like great niece's mum, very particular about what she likes and what she doesn't. And there's no point trying to second guess her. I mean, you can think, oh yeah, well I know she likes this type of colour, or I know, for example, she wouldn't want this sweater. She likes pastels and subtle colours. So it'd be no good making something like this for her. And I thought, if I'm going to make this for my great niece, and my niece is potentially going to hang it in the house, it has to be something that they would both want. So I contacted my sister and said, do you think they would like this? And she said, oh yeah, I think she would. And I said, now do you want me to go down the traditional red and green Christmas colour route, or something more purpley, knowing that purple was a favourite colour. And little one likes purple as well as her mum, so here we go. So I started this, and the plan was to pass it on to my family. We have a day, usually about a week or so before Christmas, we call it present swapping day, where we get together. Because there are nurses in the family and people with other commitments, we can very rarely be together on Christmas Day, but we normally get together just before Christmas to exchange gifts, have a day all together, not open the gifts, but just kind of pass them over so that everyone's ready for Christmas with all the things we would want them to have. And my plan was to have this made and give it to niece and great niece on that day. Unfortunately, I was in hospital for about 10 days leading up to that time last year. And this wasn't a good hospital project because it's quite bitty. There's lots of ends, the pieces needed blocking. So I thought, well, rather than ask himself to bring this in, I will carry on with something else and this will come later. And it did, about a month and a half later. That's fine. There will be a Christmas next year. They can have it then. And little one's birthday is towards the end of November, so I might put some little toys and pens and stationery things and sweets and things in as almost like a little advent for her, do it as a birthday gift as an advent. So it will sit in the drawer until I need it end of the year. Yarns, scraps of double knitting weight. Some were finer yarns held double. As you can see, some of the hexagons I've made in stripes, others I've made in solid colours. I've got some sparkly yarn here. These were mostly bits of yarn that I've been given. People have come across bags of yarn and said, here Les, you can use those. So a lot of these pieces were from those sorts of collections. So a bit of a mixture, but you make it work. The pattern is the Vintage Hexagon Christmas Stocking by Hand Cramp Crafts, and I'm pretty sure that's a free pattern on Ravelry. And the hexagons are made individually and then sewn together, and it gives instructions of how to assemble them, everything you need. I'll be honest, I didn't particularly enjoy making this. It gave an option to increase the size of the hexagons by one row, which I did. And normally hexagons are a shape that when you're crocheting, they lay pretty flat. These didn't, which is why I needed to block them. And I've got one of those blocks with the pins and the holes. So I found it a bit faffy, more than I was expecting. And when I was making the pieces, they weren't laying flat as I would expect them to. And when I've got a blanket on my spare bed, which is all hexagons, a different pattern certainly, and they all laid completely flat and still do, whereas these still feel a bit bumpy. Having said that, you're creating a three-dimensional object because you're creating a stocking, so it doesn't matter, and it's a Christmas stocking, you know, I mean, it hasn't got to fit anyone. But I didn't particularly enjoy the process. I possibly won't make another one. If I got a specific request from the family, then I possibly would, but I might make another stocking. I don't know if I'd follow this pattern again. I don't wish to sound all critical, which I know I do, because it's a free pattern. Someone's very kindly offered it, put it out there. Maybe if you made the hexagons one row smaller, they wouldn't crinkle up in the same way. Maybe it was my tension. You know, I'm more than willing to accept that an error I was making was creating this problem. I'm just relaying my experience. But all made, all sewn together, little loop added for hanging, and this will go in the drawer for Christmas things for next year. I used a total of 91 grams, which for acrylic DK I estimate on average, because some of this is quite dense, quite old-fashioned, we're back to the squeaky DK, about 273 metres, that's my estimation. And like I say, it is an estimation because there are some finer yarns used double, there are probably some that are nearer the yardage of this premium acrylic, so it is a little bit of a guess. But although I didn't particularly enjoy making it, I wouldn't not recommend it. Just be aware that you do have to block out the hexagons and they do crinkle up a little bit. But I am pleased with the end result. And I think it will be fun. Hopefully I haven't made it too folksy homespun looking for my niece. But if I have and she then passes it on to someone else, that's fine. Her choice. She didn't ask for it, I offered it. So that's that. Yet again, I am the beneficiary of generosity. I have a parcel. This is from the wonderful Barb from Ontario, who I had the pleasure of meeting a few years ago, and she came to London and I met her there. And she has sent me this parcel, which I am now opening. Oh my goodness. Oh, she's good with the tape, is our Barb. Right, so let me see. So we have a very pretty card, which I'm struggling to open, obviously, because I'm trying to open it upside down. Oh, wow. Yes, I can say her name. Good, because I already have. Thank you, Barb. If not, that would be some quick editing. And I had mentioned being cold, so this is something hopefully to keep me warm. Handmade especially for me. Barb, thank you so much. She is such a kind person. Absolutely lovely. So what do we have here? I'm going to need a cutting implement, I think. Right. This looks amazing. And the fact that someone has made this for me is staggering. Oh my goodness. It's one of those vacuum sealed bags, so bear with me while I get it open. Undo that bit. Okay, now I'm not saying I'm a little weakened at the moment, but I did have struggles getting open this vacuum sealed bag. It's a very good seal on it. Excuse the rattling. But oh my goodness, this is stunning. My goodness me. Look at this. There is a bag. Barb makes bags. In fact, I've been using, I think this is one of hers that I've been using recently. Yep, one of Barb's. There's a bag with a clear patch, which we like. And look at this gorgeousness. It is a beautiful quilt. Oh, good night. Oh, Bob, thank you so much. That is just... I am so touched that you've made this. This is so kind. And I mean, just look at it. It's huge and stunning and beautifully done and quilted all through, and thank you. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate this, and it is lovely and warm. Oh, yes, this is very cosy. Thank you very much. This is wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's absolutely stunning. Oh, my. Night all. Hello, lovelies. How are we? Got a bit of finished spinning to show you. Now normally when I show you it's in a skein, but in this case I've put it straight into a cake because I'm using up all of my hand spun in a blanket, which I will show you either as a whip or an FO later in the month, depending on how I get on. It's been quite a useful project and I'll talk about it then. But this is the latest spin. And on the camera screen, the kind of yellow-green chartreuse colour is showing up very bright. It is a nice bright yellowy green, but we've also got some beautiful pinks, purples, lovely turquoise in here. Lots of my favourite colours all in one go. And this fibre was very kindly given to me. It's Okanagan. And it is 100% untreated 22 micron merino roving, and it's produced 128 meters of yarn at roughly 16 wraps per inch. Now I say roughly because I had trouble drafting this and the fault is entirely mine. It is not the fibre is lovely. I don't know what was going on. I split it into thirds. I wanted to make a 3-ply, classic 3-ply. Split it into thirds. The first two I just really had trouble drafting, so we have some very thick bits. It's a rather uneven spin, but that's okay. Means you get more of the lovely colours. Yeah, so that did not go well. The last bit that I drafted much finer. This meant that I had quite a bit left over after I'd plied the classic 3-ply. So I decided to take this as a good opportunity to practice my chain plying. And actually, if you look at some of this, it would appear that my chain plying has improved considerably. So a very useful exercise in that respect, because these are fairly even and I'm happy with those. I mean, it's not perfect by a long way, but it's much better than I was expecting. It's a lovely soft yarn. I mean, heavy, dense because my hand spun is. It's just the way I do it. But soft, merino, as you would expect. So this will go into my blanket. This is the last hand spun I've currently got for the blanket. And I think it will make a nice, bright, colourful edging. So I'm looking forward to putting it in. Sounds a bit rude. So, sorry. But yeah, so could have been happier with the drafting and the initial spinning, but I was very pleased with the chain plying on the last bit of it. And I love the colours. Hello lovelies. Hope everyone's okay. I have another, yes, another finished object. You can tell I'm not doing much except crafting at the moment, and I'm not complaining about it. I showed you this last month when I started it, and it's a blanket made of hand spun. And pretty much all of my hand spun is now used. There's a sweater that I'm working on, when I'll show you in a roundup of works in progress, that has a little bit in it, but the rest, some of which had been sitting unused for quite some time, has gone into this blanket. I know I should stand and do one of those curled up and then drop it reveals and that, but no, I'm not going to. Here's a photo of it laid out on my sofa so you can see it in its entire glory. There's a bit of everything in here. There's a lot of witchcrafty lady fibre spun into yarn, as you would expect. There's some web spun wares. There's so many Kathy's fibres, Okanagan, just lots of stuff. The most recent hand spun that you saw earlier this month is around the edge. So it does show actually that, if I can find the right bit, that my chain plying kind of worked, because when you chain ply you keep colours together. So if you look at the second row in, those greens, they worked pretty well, and you've got a sort of turquoise there. So yes, that I was pleased with how that went, as I mentioned, and quite heavy because my hand spun is dense. It's about 60 inches by 70. Now I wanted a rectangular blanket. I was looking for patterns on Ravelry, and in the back of my mind was that understanding that a granny square is always very forgiving when you're dealing with different thicknesses of yarn. When I've made scrap blankets, like the one on the chair behind me, I'll have variations of thickness, not too extreme. I mean, I don't go from lace weight to chunky, but there will be variations. It's never the same yarn all the way through, and the granny square is quite forgiving. I wanted it rectangular. Now you can start by doing a rectangular centre and then working round, but I saw a pattern, it's a lion brand pattern, which I'll link below, for a granny square that has a log cabin effect on it. And although I think the original pattern is square, I thought that is a good way to make a rectangular blanket, because you start off with your central square, and I made a very small one, as you can see, relatively, but then you're doing granny stripes to make each block of the log cabin. So on two sides of the blanket I did 5 rows, and on the other two sides I did 7 rows to give me a rectangular shape. There were times when I couldn't count, didn't know which row was which, and basically struggled with the very simplest of things. That happens sometimes, and I was left with a choice: do I unpick it and start again, or do I think, it's a blanket, I'll make it right? Guess which I did. So yes, it's not quite, my square isn't central, and some of these stripes are a little bit wider, where I was rectifying to get back to where I wanted to be, but it really doesn't matter, because although it's all my hand spun, it's essentially a scrap blanket, although they weren't scraps, if you see what I mean, and it doesn't really matter. The main thing is it'll keep someone warm, and I think it will. And it is quite heavy, so it'll almost be like a weighted blanket kind of feel, because it is quite dense, but very cosy. So that's the latest FO. Whips to follow. Hello lovelies, it's time for a roundup of whips, sort of wrapping everything up for the month. So I'm not going to go through all of the whips I've got going on, but I will go through some active ones. So I'm going to start off with a knitted sweater, which I can't remember the name of, so I'm going to find the pattern. It's by Melissa Clulo, and it is the La Rentrée. Now, I said last month when I finished some hand spun that I fancied having that particular yarn as a stripe in a circular yoke sweater. And in my stash I have some alpaca yarn. One of my lovely friends has a friend who has an alpaca flock, and some years ago she said, did I want to buy some of this friend's yarn, which obviously I did. So what I did was my usual thing of doing a swatch, because I felt that my hand spun wasn't 4-ply weight, it was nearer a sport, and that's what this alpaca seemed to be. So I did a swatch, got the gauge, and then found a pattern to match. That's a free pattern, which I will link below. So here is the yoke of the sweater, which is actually coming out. It feels very big. I'm worried it's one of those that's going to feel a bit like a clown sweater. My gauge is fine, I've double checked that. Everything is as it should be. But we'll see how it feels when I'm getting to split for the sleeves, which isn't long now. But there is the hand spun. I said I felt it would stripe, and it has. So I'm pleased with how that's turned out. I also have some other hand spun which I'll put further down in the sweater, and this was from the random row legs very kindly given to me by Coral of Coral Rose Fibres, which I spun a little while ago. So again, it will stripe, and that will go into the body of the sweater. So that's where we are with that. I will put a marker on it so that I know where it was when I showed you. A project that I'm doing less often, but one of those sort of funny little items, is a hat. Not a warm hat, but a sun hat. As a Secret Santa at our knitting group, the year before last I think it was, got a couple of, I don't know if you'd call these skeins cakes or what you'd call them, but it's a raffia yarn, a paper yarn, yeah, 100% paper, from Wool in the Gang. It's their Rah Rah Raffia, and it was actually a kit. It came with a pattern for a bag, but the bag wasn't the sort of style I would normally go for. So I was looking around, and I've had this in the queue for a little while for something else to use this yarn with. And I found a hat pattern. It is the June Sun Hat by Ashley Kaiser. And again, gauge seems to be working out pretty accurately. And this is as far as I've got at the moment. So it starts from the centre of the crown, increase, and I'm on the depth of the crown here, and then it's brimmed. So so this is a project I'm kind of turning to periodically. It's very slow yarn to work with. It's quite soft. It's not one of these really harsh raffias that feels as if it's you know, hurting you. But it is quite slow to work with compared to yarn. It's not something that you feel you can get a good catch. I'm not sure that's the correct term, but you know, you sort of catch the yarn and the hook. It takes more thought, a bit more careful manoeuvring. So that's why it's a slower piece. But it's a small hat. You know, it's not going to take me years. In theory, you never know. The next project is a crochet project, and this is the Leaves Cascade by Anna D. And as you know, I print everything in black and white, but there's the picture. So it's a boxy shape sweater with a lace central panel. Knowing that I was likely to run out of yarn, of course, I did the sleeves first, and I'm now working on the front. Front and backs are the same. And let me just show you where I am at. It's not going to show up against this because the colours are quite similar, but here is the front panel. And obviously when it's blocked out, and excuse me lifting my sweater up, but I think it will show better against the shirt because it's lighter. No, not in the slightest, never mind. There is a lace pattern there, I promise. I'll put a better picture in of the designer sweater. So it will need some careful blocking, and I'll have to think about what I wear it over to show the maximum beauty of this lace panel. It's quite a simple pattern. It's one of those that looks more complicated than it is. Having said that, once you've set up the pattern, it's then a 3-row repeat. And I have lost count of how many times I've had to unpick and go back to correct which of the 3 rows I thought I was working on. And the frustration is, you'll get to here, for example, and realise that you've got a mistake on the row below. So you then have to unpick all of this plain work as well. And that feels very frustrating. You're not just unpicking the bit that's wrong. And I guess that's the difference between knitting and crochet as well, that knitting you drop down and just work on that area as a rule. Whereas with crochet that's not an option, so you're unpicking the whole row. But I am enjoying the sweater. Now the yarn, I should tell you about the yarn, is from Rose's Knitting Shed. And do I have the ball band to tell you the colour? No, I don't. Of course I don't. I'll put it in the notes below. Also on the sleeve, because again I knew I wouldn't have quite enough, I've got some dark green at the bottom, and I will be using, this is what I have left of that ball, this is what I'll be using. Once I've used up what I've got of the roses, or half of what I got, I'll split this in half and do another stripe on the bottom of that. This is Stranded Dye Works. It is the Merino Yak Nylon Fingering, and it's a one-of-a-kind colourway. And as you can see, it's a nice, it's coming up a little lighter on my camera screen. It's quite a dark, sort of jadey British racing green sort of colour. So that's that one. And the only other one I've got is a project that's had many incarnations in a strange sort of way. This is going to rattle. Let me get this open. Now this is a very simple crochet pattern. It started off more complicated. It's a crochet blanket, and I'm doing one row in treble crochets UK terms, one row in double crochets UK terms. So to translate to US terms, that's double and single. And I'm using County Effect yarn in the rainbow colourways. I have had this yarn for I don't know how many years. I got it the first time I went to the knitting show at Alexandra Palace, which got to be around about 2008, I think. I mean, we are talking quite some time ago. And this was the first long colour change yarn that I came across. I'm not saying it was the first one, but it was the first one I saw. I saw it in a knitting magazine, and they showed some stranded work. And what I love about it is the way the colours kind of diverge and converge. So in the centre of this, I've got quite similar colours, and you can see particularly in this bit here that it gives quite an interesting effect, almost like a blurred, smoky glass effect, as colours go together and then diverge again. This was a piece of mosaic. It was a pattern from a blanket whose name I can't remember. Again, I'll put it below, because it's quite a nice pattern. But it was far too faffy for me. Particularly at the time, this then became a project I took into hospital when I was there in December, and I just wanted to work on something really simple. So I just changed it to 2 different stitch lengths. And what I did to make life easy for myself, in case I did put it down and forget, is I just put a little stitch marker on what I'm considering my contrast colour. I mean, that's my name for it, because it's not a contrast at all, but it's the colour that I'm using for the double crochet. And so when they are both the same colour, I'll know which is which, because this is getting towards sort of yellows. This is, I can see the reds in here. There will come a point, because there are different stitch lengths, where they are similar and then when they're different. So I just put a little marker. It just runs down the yarn on the one I'm using for the double crochet, just so that when they're very similar, I'll know which is which. This is a pick up and put down every now and again project. I've actually got about 6 balls of this yarn, so it could become quite a substantial blanket, considering this is only the first ball of each, and I've still got this of the 2 that I'm using. But I don't know how big a blanket I'll make it. Who knows? But I am enjoying it, and it's one of these yarns that became a bit almost too precious to use. And it started off, I had this idea that I was going to make a colourwork cardigan that was all steeked. So sleeve and everything worked in one round, but with steeks, so that all of the colour stripes and colour bands would match. I know myself better than that. I am never going to make that cardigan or sweater or whatever it was I decided to make. It really was a beautiful theory, and more patient knitters than I would possibly do that. May have already done it, I don't know. But I'm not going to do that. So I've had sort of various ideas. I started doing a scarf with one ball of this that I've subsequently unpicked because I just wasn't enjoying knitting it, so unpicked it. And this seems to be working for me as a straightforward pick up and put down when I'm looking for something fairly simple project. So that's where I am with that. Like I say, I've got other works in progress on the go, but these are the kind of the active ones at the moment. What I've been doing to try and keep things current is the knitted sweater and the crochet sweater. I'm working on, basically I've got a rota, so I'm working on those a couple of times a week. So I've got a rota of knitted sweater, crochet sweater, and then blanket, knitted sweater, crochet sweater, rota project. So this week that's the hat, next week it might be something else. So I will show you those next month as they go along, but there hasn't been a huge amount done, so it doesn't feel that worthwhile to go through stuff that either you haven't seen for a long time, or when you last saw it another 2 rows have been done, or something equally insignificant. So for the moment these are the active whips, and I'll show you them as they're finished and other whips as they're being worked on. So that's about it for this month. Life and health update. Obviously, if you're just here for the crafting content, thank you for being here, and see you again end of March. Yeah, life and health. When I last spoke to you at the end of January, I was saying, oh, I should have finished my chemo by the end of February. And I have, but not quite in the way we planned. The chemotherapy was having a very detrimental effect on my health. And for some people this happens, for other people it doesn't. And the decision was made to stop my chemo after 5 cycles rather than do the 6 that had been planned. The last 2 that I had also had a different dosage. I was initially having 2 chemotherapy drugs. That was reduced to 1 because of this kidney related problem. So that's kind of where that was. That doesn't solve the problem of this new tumour that was discovered in September before I started all treatment. And initially the plan was to treat that with the chemotherapy. Having spoken with the oncologist, change of plan, that is, as far as we know, a single mass. So it can be effectively treated with radiotherapy, which should have a much reduced effect on the rest of me because of the nature of the treatments. So I've been and had my scan and my tattoos, because they mark you up so that they can direct the radiotherapy very accurately to the area they're looking to treat. I'm calling them my prison tats because I'm desperate to be cool in any way, shape or form. But actually it's just 3 little dots that they use to line the machine up. And on Thursday of next week, I start 2 weeks of radiotherapy, going every day. I've been told the appointments are quite short. It's been described to me as like having a slow x-ray. And side effects should be considerably less than I've had with the chemotherapy. And certainly the last chemo, a few days after that, I was more ill than I felt throughout all of this. So not at all, I say not at all, not sorry that I'm not having any more, but there's always that sense of, would that have been the most effective treatment? But there's no point doing that if it's causing you so many other problems. And we're talking to the oncologist. They said it's extremely rare for it to happen, but their concern was that it would cause permanent kidney damage rather than just something that will right itself with the treatment being ended. So hopefully that will correct itself and that will be fine. Radiotherapy, as I say, much reduced in terms of the side effects. I've been warned that there may be some small irritation to the skin with it drying out, just moisturise as needed, to the surrounding organs, because although they pinpoint as accurately as they can, there are other parts around that can be slightly affected, but very short-term sort of irritation or discomfort with those. And the other main symptom with the radiotherapy is fatigue. Now, having spoken to some people, my sister Bev, who had radiotherapy a few years ago, I paused then because I can't remember how many years, sorry Bev, she was talking to me earlier saying she didn't find she had the fatigue, so I really don't know if it will affect me or not. Everything seems to be on a very kind of individual basis in terms of how it affects us, so it's still riding the wave as I've been advised to do all along, and just dealing with each thing as it comes up. And if I do have a lot of fatigue and I spend a lot of time asleep, then that's what I'll do. It may mean next month's podcast doesn't have quite as many finished objects as this month's and last month's, because there has been a lot kind of coming off the needles and hooks in the last couple of months. That may slow down, but if it does, it does. Sticking to my motto of doing what I can when I can, because it's pretty much all I can do. After that, I'm assuming there'll be scans to see how effective that treatment has been, and then discussions and decisions about where to go from there. I was talking with some friends earlier and they said, oh, have you not asked? I said, well, they don't know, because until we do the post-treatment scans, we don't know what we're left dealing with. So we'll deal with each situation as it comes up. That's all we can do. Generally, not been too bad. My taste buds are getting back to normal. For the last few months, I have found particularly things with vinegar in them go very bitter for me, just taste very bitter. And at first, I thought it was all savoury food that was doing that, because there is a condiment in the UK called HP sauce. The HP stands for Houses of Parliament. There's a picture of that on the label, and it's a tamarind flavoured sauce. If you go to places to eat where it's the sort of meal you'd have that sort of condiment, you'll get asked, do you want red or brown sauce, which means do you want tomato ketchup or do you want HP or a variant thereof. I love this stuff. I quite like vinegary things, I like pickly things. So to not be able to have that for quite a few months has felt not normal, because I put it on quite a lot of things, and food has tasted a bit bland. And I know that my taste buds have been odd anyway, because that's one of the things that chemotherapy does. But the other day I just put a little bit of HP on my finger, tasted it, and it was fine. So I've had chips with HP sauce on them, and I was ridiculously happy to be able to do that. Himself was finding it quite amusing that I was like so excited that I had HP sauce on chips. But it was that sense of normality, it was that sense of coming back to regular, normal service has been resumed. So yeah, taste buds are coming back to normal. Still very tired, very quick to tire, and can't stand for any length of time. I get some back pain, which I think is probably to do with the kidneys. Can't walk very far. I walk with a stick if I'm outside the house, because I just find for balance and for support that works best for me, so that's what I do. But certainly this week I've had 3 days where I've met up with friends. Tuesday, lovely lady I used to work with came here. Yesterday was out with a friend, went for a pub lunch. Had ketchup actually, I didn't have HP. Anyway, and then today was with another group of friends around at someone's house. So it feels lovely to be able to see people and have the energy to see people and kind of hold conversations. And I know I'm not at full strength, and so I do sometimes absent myself because I'm getting tired and, you know, I need to just rest. But it has felt lovely. I've got a Zoom call on Sunday with some friends. Zoom call the day this post goes up, with the Flame and Fibre Zoomies crew. So yeah, it's nice to feel that I'm kind of back amongst people and back doing things that I enjoy with others. So I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's sent their good wishes and their warm thoughts and their hopes for healing, and who's kept in touch. I really do appreciate it. It's been one of those times when you realise how much you're held in the support and warmth and friendship and kindness of others, and it means a huge amount, and I am extremely grateful. So I think that's it for this month. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all your thoughts and comments. I have been catching up with some comments this year. I think I'm back as far as one of the Vlogmases. And people are saying, oh, you don't need to reply, but I feel I do. And even if you just end up with a heart emoji or something, I do read everything, and I am very grateful to you for commenting and for kind of getting involved. It means a huge amount. So big thanks to you all for being here. Happy crafting whatever you do. I hope life is treating you with kindness. I hope you're able to find time to do the things that you enjoy, and that you're feeling well enough and able to do them. And just a big squishy thanks to you all. See you at the end of March. Take care everyone. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.